Well, hello everybody. I'm Jerry Rackley, Chief Analyst here at Demand Metric. As our Demand Generation Virtual Summit continues, I'm really pleased to be joined by Laura Patterson, who is President and Co-Founder of VisionEdge Marketing. We're going to share some research that we partnered to complete just literally last week, and we're publishing it this week, the week of the summit. So it's perfect timing. Laura, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Hello, everyone. Glad to be with you guys.
And you see our session's called Tales from the Marketing Performance Pack Leaders. And if you surmise that it has something to do with marketing performance management and analytics, then you are correct. You may be thinking, why are we talking about this at a demand generation event? Laura and I think it's highly relevant for a couple of reasons. The demand gen process often is an area in marketing that is a pocket of excellence when it comes to marketing performance management. The notion of using analytics to manage marketing's performance in other areas may not have gained traction, but usually there is some effort to manage demand gen performance with data. If there isn't anything going on in the demand gen area when it comes to managing this process with data and analytics, it's probably the best place to have it take root. And Laura, I know you have some thoughts about this as well.
Yes, and I'm really agree with you that it's important for us to be talking about how we can apply marketing performance management to demand gen, and you're absolutely right, Jerry. Lots of folks who are excelling in that area, but as we all know, marketing's job is much broader. As Phil Kotler says, our job is to find, keep, and grow the value of customers. And so there's more to what we do in marketing than just demand gen. We need to be able to apply many of the things we might learn in demand gen around marketing performance, accountability, and measurement to all the other areas of marketing.
Well, with that, let's jump into all the material we have to share. And for those of you who are listening, we thank you for joining us. It may feel a little bit like you're drinking from a fire hose because we have lots of data. But if you'll hang on till the end, I think you'll find it's worth it, and we'll tell you how to get the full set of detail on this. So with that, Laura, let's talk about it.
So we're going to cover a number of different things. And one of the things I think it's important to us to realize is that marketing performance management needs to be something that's part of the marketer's way of doing business. It's not really something special or extra or outside of the realm of what we normally do in our day-to-day lives, but it really needs to be an integral part of the way we do our work, because that will lead to many great things, as we're about to share with you, in terms of the way we are perceived by the people we work for in the organization.
And here's something we found in our study that everyone acknowledges. We don't really need a study to know this, that all marketers are feeling pressure. And that pressure comes in the form of a question that is, it's a rhetorical question perhaps, but it's there. It's always hanging over us, and that is the question the C-suite and really others in the organization have. What have you done for us lately, marketing? And when we did our study, we specifically measured this and found that 83% of the participants in our benchmark study report that the pressure on them to prove their performance and value is increasing. And it really hasn't changed from last year's survey. But what we also found is that a select group of marketing organizations address that pressure better and differently. And what that does is it not only lets them keep their seat at the corporate leadership table, but also helps them earn greater credibility and influence.
We've been doing this research since 2001, so we have a lot of very interesting data. We're not obviously going to go into that here, but it's important to know that we've been looking at these kinds of questions for quite a while, and where we can, we'll share that with you. So to Jerry, to your point, the pressure that you mentioned that they're having today, that pressure is not new. It hasn't abated. It's been going on for a long time. But as you pointed out, some marketers are doing a better job of addressing it than others. So let's talk about those marketers. One of the key questions that we have been asking for many, many years is how the C-suite grades the marketing organization on its ability to demonstrate its value and contribution to the business. And they're given a scoring of 90 to 100, 80 to 89, 70 to 79, or below that. And so what we've been able to do is organize these marketers by their grade, and then look at what the differences are between those marketers by grade. So this year, only about 1 in 5 marketing organizations are earning what we call an A from the C-suite. But what's really important to also note is that nearly half of the marketers aren't making the grade at all. They're getting a score of C or less. And let's talk a little bit about what we mean by the kinds of marketers, because one of the things we've been able to do is begin to characterize these marketers as a result of the research, and we have a number of different personas associated with these groups. So the A's, which sadly has sort of been a declining group. So last year was about 1 in 4, and that's been kind of consistent. This year it's 1 in 5. These A's are strategically oriented. They're very data driven. And what's unique about them is their focus is really on creating value for customers in the business. So they're not functionally oriented. Remember we were talking earlier about demand gen? While they may see demand gen as a key part of their role, they do think much more strategically, much more broadly. And so this group we are known as the value creators. Now we have another group known as the Bs, and this group is characterized as the sales enablers. They really do understand the path of marketing performance management, but because their primary focus is on demand gen, they often really see themselves as in service to the sales organization, as opposed to leading the organization around the customer. So these are the sales enablers. The last group there, where we put the C's, the D's, and the lower or marketing grades, are campaign producers. Think of these people who operate primarily as an internal agency or a service provider. They're really focused on producing marketing outputs. They're the ones that are really great at getting all the content out and getting the website up and doing all of the campaigns. And they think of themselves as in service to the organization from a production perspective. And we're going to now look at the differences in those three groups when it comes to their ability to demonstrate their value, how they do it, how they don't do it as well, and what it means to the business. One of the things that's important to understand is how satisfied we are ourselves. You know, Jerry and I have been talking about this lifestyle and this health or metaphor, and I know Jerry will probably add into this in just a moment, but many of us, you know, we go through periods of time in our lives when we might not be satisfied with our weight. And some of us are going to take action and some of us are not. So one of the things we wanted to find out is how satisfied are these people when they take a look at where they stack up. And so you can see that no one's completely satisfied. I think that's very common. How many of us are completely satisfied with everything that's going on in our own health lives, right? When we get on the scale, have you ever met a woman who feels like she's completely satisfied? So here we are, and not everyone is satisfied, but you can see the A's, the value creators, are more satisfied, significantly more satisfied than the rest of the pack. And so I think this is a really important thing to understand, and that this satisfaction has a lot to do with the initiative and motivation. So they're more satisfied, the value creators, in their ability to track their performance data and actually use that data to improve marketing as well as business performance. Whereas the campaign producers, their average satisfaction doesn't really even rise above the midpoint. And so that's something we want to encourage anyone who feels that they're there to get motivated. The other thing that's really important to understand is not just satisfaction, but how well does the leadership recognize and know marketing's impact. So you can see here that really only the value creators are doing a respectable job of making it clear to the leadership team just how well and how much marketing is impacting the business. This is really important because if we can't show how we are impacting the business, we aren't really relevant. And you can see that the gap here is significant, right? 63% of the value creators, their leadership team knows the impact that they are having on the business. Whereas if you look at the campaign producers, it's only about 7%. This is a 40-point delta even to the sales enablers. So 2/3 of the value creators really understand the impact they're having, or believes that the leadership team understands the impact that they're having on the business. So this is an important distinction. And this gap has continued to widen.
And Laura, I'm going to add that, we've had discussions in marketing circles for years about the tenure of CMOs and how it yo-yos back and forth. It's shorter, it's longer, etc. And I believe this perception that leadership has everything to do with that tenure. And while we didn't do this in the study, I think if we were to go and measure the tenure of CMOs in each one of these three personas we've described here, when only 7% of the leadership for campaign producers thinks that marketing's having an impact, that's got to have a serious effect on that tenure.
I agree. That is a great question. So now that we understand that this question, what is it that helps them know whether or not marketing is having an impact? And this has to do with the ability to measure marketing's value. So I know that marketers are just drowning in a sea of metrics. The numbers of things that we can measure today is almost infinite. If you try to do that, you'll end up boiling the ocean. And so what really is important is being able to understand what are the right metrics and be able to measure marketing's value. So the value creators are much better and much more successful at measuring marketing's value. And the key reason they're more successful, and we've been able to statistically prove this now for quite a number of years, is that the value creators are much better at aligning marketing to business outcomes that the C-suite, particularly the CEO and the CFO, as well as the business unit leaders, really care about. They're 3 times better than the lagging campaign producers and twice as good as the sales enablers at selecting metrics that are really going to measure marketing's value. And we're going to talk more about metrics in a little bit. Another thing that's important to look at that is different between these groups is how much marketing's data is used by others, right? So one of the key things that we have been talking about now for a number of years is data. And we're going to talk even more about data in a moment. But being able to measure business results and impact requires the right data and the ability to actually use it effectively. And marketing organizations need to be able to collect it, manage it, and exploit it in a way that will make it effective, make it possible for the organization to make effective decisions. And so what you can see here is how reliant others are on marketing's data. So there's lots of room for improvement here, right? Because even the value creators, their data isn't getting a lot of usage, but it's significantly more used by others than the sales enablers and the campaign producers. So if you guys feel that you're in the demand gen world, which is a lot of the sales enablers, your data may not be being used as much as you would like it to be used, and there are some reasons for that, and so that may be an area you want to spend some time on.
Laura, you and I both are going to agree that the data usage isn't high enough anywhere, but certainly the value creators are seeing their data used much better than the other 2 groups.
Exactly. In the end, it really does boil down to what kind of impact we're having on the business, and I think this is a really important piece of information, and I hope all of you will spend some time with this particular slide. What are the things that businesses care about? Well, they care about their revenue. They care about how marketing is contributing to the pipeline. They care about win rates. They care about getting new customers, net new customers. They care about retaining customers, and they care about growing the value of those customers, seeing the share of wallet among those customers grow. These are the things that businesses care about. So if you look at this information, value creators far outpace their counterparts on every one of these business indicators, every single one, significantly so. And the average gap between the value creators and campaign producers is like 40%. And this gap has been increasing for the past 3 years. So if you look at how to get here, it has to do with really having clarity around these business outcomes and how marketing is going to align and connect the work we do to these kinds of business results.
Laura, this all leads someplace, and the net of everything we've talked about these last few slides is really credibility, and that's what we're putting up on the slide screen right now, is just how satisfied the organization is with marketing's credibility. And we measured that. We used a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 was not satisfied at all, 10 was extremely satisfied. And you can see even the dramatic differences here. And I know you and I are both very struck by, the contrast of this data.
Yeah, this is, I think, to your point, sort of where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, right? If we don't do our jobs well in measuring the right things and getting alignment to business results and being able to demonstrate our contribution to those business results, and our data isn't being used and isn't relevant to others, then where's our credibility? So as you can see here, value creators much better than sales enablers and campaign producers in terms of marketing's credibility.
So what we want to do now is talk a little bit about marketing's vital signs, and that's a good springboard, talking about credibility, to go into this next section, where we measured some real specific areas, rather than just talk to you about here's all the things that are going wrong or need to be improved. We want to get into some more concrete things that marketers can act on practically. So let's start by talking about marketing's contribution to business goals.
this is the starting point for everything that comes next. So if you're not contributing to business goals, what is the purpose for our existence, right? This is the key thing that we do. So we really do need to go back to those business results that we were talking about earlier, revenue and market share and customer loyalty. And what we can say here is that barely 1/4 of the campaign producers can actually claim that they are contributing to business goals. So this is really critical. The value creators, this is what they do well. So if you're looking at, a vital sign, if you're not doing this well, it's going to affect everything else. And how do you do this well? Well, it really begins with that alignment. And then, of course, after you have the alignment, having the right metrics. So how do you get aligned? And so here, this is the thing to think about. How well do you really know the business? Because one of the things that's clear about the value creators is that they think of themselves as business people first and marketers second. They develop business acumen. They are recognized as business people. And so they are, because of, again, the way they use data and how they communicate, they speak in the language of the business. So you can see that, again, the perception of value creators is that nearly 3/4 of them are perceived as knowing the business, compared to only about 1/3 of the campaign producers and only half of sales enablers. So this is something that every single person, every single marketer could be working on, is building your business acumen and understanding your business better. And how do you know whether or not you have business acumen? Well, one of the key things of knowing whether or not you have business acumen goes back to the use of marketing's data. Because if it's not in terms that resonate with the leadership team, if it's not relevant or can be used by them, then that must be a reflection on the marketing organization that they don't really understand the business. So again, we're pointing this out one more time, how much difference there is between each of these three groups. Even though everybody could be doing better, the campaign producers and sales enablers, this is really an area of opportunity.
And speaking of data, I know one thing that jumped out at us, Laura, from looking at the survey data was what we're sharing on this slide right now, and that is the data and how it's used to really understand the customer. And I know both of us looked at this and kind of went, wow, this is really pretty dramatic.
Yes, Jared, you are so right. This particular slide was illuminating, right? Because I always say to folks, marketing is the only function inside a company that has the word market in it, which means that we're supposed to know the customer. We are the opportunity to be the chief value creator through the customer relationships that we create for the company and the value we create for those customers. So if you take a look at how each of these groups are doing on some very important things around the customer, like understanding the customer's buying process, understanding why or when a customer might be defecting. These are all things that marketers should be able to do. There are many other models that marketers should be good at, but certainly we should know which of our customers are going to be predisposed to purchasing and which of our products. You can see in this heat map that the value creators are better, much better on all of these things compared to the campaign producers and the sales enablers. As you can see here, there are two areas every single marketer needs to work on, and that is understanding which customers are at risk and understanding the customer experience. So two things that every marketer could improve. So measure what matters, I think, is, again, kind of a critical part of the conversation we're having here. The best-in-class marketers are more likely to measure the things that matter to the business. They focus on measuring the things that are going to help them make better decisions about what to do in terms of channels, touch points, content. They see this the measuring part as a way to help both improve things for the organization as well as prove their value. Because they understand the critical importance of alignment between marketing and business results, they're much more confident about the metrics they're going to be able to select, significantly so. I mean, again, campaign producers 5.1 compared to value creators 8.4. Even the sales enablers are only 6.8. So what this means is if you have the right alignment, and it begins with your plan, begins with your marketing plan, and it begins with establishing the right kinds of metrics and performance targets, all across the chain between the activities and investments of marketing to your marketing strategies, and objectives to the business results. Having that chain is really the important beginning point. That alignment is one of the primary muscle groups that needs to be developed, and the value creators are much better at using that muscle group, and that's, again, something very relatively easy. Almost every marketing organization has to have a plan. So this is a great place to start, and every marketing organization can do this.
And when we talk about these things, one thing that we noticed sort of at a macro level, part of what I'd call the meta-narrative, was the strategic orientation of the value creators in the survey. And we have some data we want to share with you about that.
Once again, to Jerry's point, the value creators are much more strategically oriented. They are thinking in much bigger terms about the customer, about the direction of the business. And so they are focusing their data and analytics around strategic decisions as opposed to tactical decisions. So they embrace and apply the data in order to inform strategy. And this is, I think, an important distinction. So 94% of the value creators get this. Only 66% of the sales enablers and half of the campaign producers get this. So value creators are twice as likely to actually use their data in order to inform and make strategic decisions.
So we have a prescription for action that we want to share with you now. And I think the place to start, which has been a historically difficult area for most marketers, is with the budget.
It is a good place to start. There's always a good excuse for why we, don't get our exercise in, or we don't change what we eat, or moderate how much we drink. We all have reasons for that. And we hear often marketers have similar kinds of reasons for why they don't address this. They don't have time, they don't have money, they don't have talent. Well, one of the things that often comes up is we don't have the budget. But what you can see here is that the value creators and the campaign producers are identical in their money. It's not that the value creators have more money, it's that they have more initiative, they're motivated, and this is important to them. So money is really a level playing field for all of all the marketers. What they have that's different is a plan for performance management. Value creators have a plan for marketing performance measurement and management. It's a documented plan, and they are creating that plan and they're executing that plan. They're twice as likely as campaign producers to actually have such a plan in place. So these value creators, they don't really see MPM as an exercise or a nutrition program, something they do ad hoc or haphazardly or when it's convenient or when time permits. This is really about their lifestyle. This is something that's integral to the way they operate every single day. They don't leave it to chance. They are thoughtful about it and deliberate about it. Another thing about them is that they want marketing to exemplify a center of excellence. They see marketing as being able to be one of the key functions inside the organization where there are best practices and people are collaborating in such a way for continuous improvement. So over half of the value creators really exemplify a center of excellence. So again, kind of reinforces the idea that it's a lifestyle for them, not a fad, compared to sales enablers and campaign producers. So, back to the sort of health metaphor, you don't really know when a heart attack or stroke are coming on. Just because you don't feel any pain doesn't mean that you're healthy. So if you really do care about the longevity, right, of what you're doing and about the credibility and the confidence of what you're doing, then you're going to want to put something like this in place. Because, there's again, half of the value creators really exemplify this function. So they're 6 times more likely to really operate this way than the campaign producers. In order to actually operate as a center of excellence, one of the key things you need to have is a marketing ops function. So again, the 2/3 of the value creators have a highly disciplined approach to marketing ops. And we have found that there is a really strong link between marketing operations and having a center of, and being a center of excellence. So everyone's thinking, well, we have marketing ops. We have an organization that does our campaigns, that uses our marketing automation platforms. We have an organization that monitors our budget. But the marketing ops function of the value creators is much broader. It really is that operational center for the marketing organization. And so it's way beyond just doing campaigns. It's way beyond just doing budgeting. And they look at data in a different way. They do customer marketing competitive intelligence. They do benchmarking in their marketing operations. They have workflow process development there, strategic planning. They do modeling, All kinds of things are happening inside the marketing operations function of the value creators beyond marketing technology and automation. And that allows them to really have a difference in the kinds of performance metrics that they use. So, some of you may be familiar with our framework of the metrics continuum, looking at activity metrics, which is the stuff we produce, our effort. The outputs as a result of that, things like response rates and fans and followers and downloads. Operational metrics such as, leads per rep, for example, or cost per campaign, or billing hours, or anything that is looking at efficiencies. And then outcomes, things related to pipeline contribution and customer acquisition and share of preference. Those kinds of things, leading indicators and predictive. And the bottom line here is the value creators, they use metrics in all these categories, but what's unique about the metrics is that they actually have a relationship between each of those metrics. It's not a hodgepodge from each category, but the metrics from each category relate to each other. So they have what's known as a relationship or a hierarchy among their metrics. They lead the usage in every category except the activity metrics, and there's a reason for that. They're not focused on the stuff that we're doing. They're focused on the outcomes they're producing. So unlike some of their colleagues who are very focused on measuring what they've actually produced, X number of new website pages, X more content, those kinds of things, which sales enablers and campaign producers tend to focus on, that's not where the value creators are putting their energy. That takes us to a dashboard, because if you're going to have metrics, you have to have some way to display them. And many organizations, think that if they click the button on their marketing automation platform or their CRM platform, they're producing a dashboard, but that's really not the case. So while many organizations are producing visually oriented reports, and they may be using their systems to do that, the value creators are creating a dashboard that is looking, again, more strategically, is looking at the whole chain of the metrics so they can know what toggles to move, both at the activity level and at the strategy level. And their dashboard is highly actionable. So it's not only rear view looking, but it's kind of in the windshield, so they can be trying to understand what adjustments to make going forward. When you think about their dashboards, again, all the different things that are on the dashboard, you can see that the value creators are much further along in what their dashboard is being used for and what it enables them to do. Yes, the value creators have some areas where they need to make some improvement, but in general, they're much further along in having that kind of actionable dashboard than their counterparts.
So, Laura, what it's time for us to do now is wrap things up with the action plan. And I want to begin by talking about the action plan for the value creators. They're doing a good job already, but here's some things that they need to focus on. One is the relentless pursuit of data quality and the availability of data needed to measure their results and prove marketing's contribution. The second thing is to evangelize the business insights that are derived from marketing data, and do that in other parts of the organization, particularly with the C-suite and with sales. They also need to keep expanding the role of data in all corporate decision making by showing how data-driven decisions produce better outcomes. We want them to keep building and protecting the strategic orientation of marketing and nurturing a culture around that orientation. And finally, something else we recommend is that they keep the focus on the customer by constantly studying the customer buying process and experience and tracking key metrics such as retention, loyalty, and customer lifetime value. So that's what we recommend for the value creators. And Laura, you have recommendations here for everyone else.
I do. Everyone else, folks, they have some other things they need to do and probably need help in getting up and running. So the most important thing to start with is that alignment, really understanding the business outcomes and results that marketing is expected to impact. That comes to identifying and tracking the right kinds of metrics. So making sure you have that relationship hierarchy and that you have the right kinds of metrics that are connected to the business results. So they're not being chosen randomly, but they relate to each other. And of course, data is going to continue to be important to this group. Managing data collection, the way data is stored, how it's maintained, and what kind of analytical processes you're going to be able to use. Dashboards. We've already been talking about dashboards, but this group probably needs to revamp their dashboard so that it can be more of a management tool, so it can both be used to guide marketing's improvement efforts as well as guide strategic decisions within the organization. We really have to get and hone in on understanding the buying process, the customer experience, creating personas, developing the right kinds of models, being in tune with customers and knowing when they're at risk. And so that all of that means that we have to have really good data so we can create those customer insights. Business acumen. If we don't think like business people, it's hard to be respected by business people. So we really have to build our business acumen, grow that capability within these organizations. And for many of these folks, it probably means embracing and adopting and nurturing more of a data-driven culture, as opposed to experientially or intuitively or creatively oriented.
So with that, we've come to the end of our time together, and thanks for listening in. If you are watching this and saying, boy, I could sure use some help, here's how you can get it. Laura, your contact information's here on this particular slide, as is mine. The link in the bottom right will take you to the landing page for the report. We encourage you to go visit it, and also Laura will be in the Tech Expo at the VisionEdge Marketing booth. If you want to have a further conversation about anything we've presented here, we hope you'll stop by. Thanks, everyone. We hope you found it helpful. Enjoy the rest of the summit.